all about the crochet. I'll put you in the know. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Jayda InStitches show.
Hey everybody! Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. Today on the show I'm going to talk about steam blocking. Blocking is a very important skill to have in crochet and knitting, and it's something that I get asked a lot about. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. You need a handful of things in order to do proper steam blocking. So I'm going to show you how to do it the proper way, and I'm also going to show you how to do it the quick way, which is the way I tend to steam block a lot of things that don't really matter as much. So if I'm trying to stretch a granny square into the right shape, or I'm just giving something a last minute little before I give it off as a gift, I do it a quick way. So I'm going to show you two ways to do steam blocking today. Here's a disclaimer. If you are not used to handling a hot iron or the steam part of an iron, this is something you're going to want to get a little bit of help with. So if you have little hands or you're just not used to handling an iron in general, I want you to be aware of a couple things. Steam is hot. It can burn you. It can burn things around your workspace. So wherever you do your steam blocking, make sure there's nothing else around. No plastic bags, no balls of yarn, no paper, nothing. You don't want anything near that iron because you could start a fire and nobody wants that. Also, you got to be really careful when using steam to keep your face away from it and your pinkies, because steam is literally 100 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 100 degrees of something, of really, really hot. And it'll burn, and you don't want a steam burn because those are terrible. And so you got to be really, really careful when you're doing this. So if you're an old pro with an iron, let's get started. If you're not an old pro, then I want you to watch this tutorial and then maybe get some help the first couple times you use a steam iron, because nobody wants to get hurt. All right, let's take a look at what we need in order to block properly. Okay, here is my ironing space. I have a little tabletop ironing board, but if you've got one of the big ones that you use for ironing full-size shirts and stuff, that's fine too. This is just the one that I use in my craft room because it's small and I can fit it into smaller spaces. So you need an ironing board, for sure. Secondly, you obviously need the things that you're going to be blocking. I just have a pile of random granny squares here that I'm going to demonstrate with today, but this can be anything. It can be a whole blanket, it can be parts of a sweater, the whole sweater, anything that you need to flatten out, stretch out a little bit, or just make it lie nice and loosey-goosey, like, say, the shawl that we did a little while ago. Steam blocking helps loosen up your stitches, so it doesn't necessarily always mean that you need something to lay flat. You just might want to let it lay a little looser. So you need what you're going to block. Then, for proper steam blocking, you need some straight pins. So these are the sorts of pins you get in a sewing kit, and a clean tea towel. Preferably one without too much color on it, because you don't want any accidental dye transfer between your tea towel and the things that you are blocking, or vice versa. If you're working with a really strongly dyed yarn, you don't want it to transfer back to your tea towel. So an older tea towel, but make sure it's clean. And then, of course, you need your iron. Steam irons have an actual steam setting, and it can vary depending on the brand of iron you have, but usually it's the highest, hottest setting, and there's maybe a little steam puff or sort of an image of a little puffy bit of steam or something floating over top of the last few hot settings. When you use the steam setting on your iron, you have to put water in it. And there's a little water reservoir, and it tells you sort of how much water you can put in it at a time. There's a max level and a minimum level. Don't ever go above the max level, because when you tip your iron down to start ironing, water will pour out of it. So make sure you don't put in the max, just under it. And I'm totally gonna Martha Stewart on you guys now, but if you're particular about your steam iron and you use it a lot, you want to be particular about the kind of water you put in your steam iron. Completely distilled steam water, or so completely distilled water, is the sort of thing you want to put in your iron. Tap water's fine if you don't use it very often, but what happens after a while is water that isn't distilled has lots and lots of lime and calcium and minerals and stuff in it, which is good for us, but not necessarily so good for your hot iron. And what'll happen is it will build up over time on all of the little divots you see on this part of the iron. It'll literally clog up the workings of your iron, and it won't be able to steam, and it won't heat up properly, and in really extreme cases, it'll catch on fire. So if you're going to be doing a lot of steam blocking or just using the steam setting on your iron a lot in general, use distilled water. And that can be stuff that literally comes out of your dehumidifier, for example. That water has gone through a process and it's distilled. Other distilleries, if you've got some sort of distiller in the fridge, or maybe you've got one of those automatic taps, you can use that water too. Basically what you want is water without a lot of stuff in it. And that's the sort of thing you put in your steam iron. So once you've got all those things together, we can start steam blocking. You want to make sure your iron is plugged in and turned on and it's at the hottest steam setting because you want your water to boil. That's what creates steam, right? So make sure your iron's on, and while it's heating up, you can prepare your pins, your tea towel, and the item that you're going to block. Notice how there is nothing around my iron. I do not want to cause any fires, so the iron is sitting on the widest part of the ironing board, and it's not going to touch anything. And the rest of the surface is where I'm doing my work. You lay your tea towel down on top of your work surface. Why the tea towel? Well, because we're going to pin the four corners of the item that we are blocking down to the tea towel. So you just grab a straight pin, take the corner of your square or whatever it is you're blocking, and just gently pin it to your tea towel. Typically, tea towels have a little bit of extra weight, so they're not going to bunch up on you, and it'll help keep your square or whatever it is you're blocking in the shape that you want it to take. So if you're sort of blocking the part of an arm or the sleeve of a sweater, then pin it so that the sweater part lies flat, all of the corners are shaped. You get the picture. What shape you want is how you pin it down on your tea towel. Now we're going to steam it. There's another thing on your steam iron that you have to make sure is engaged before steam comes out. There's probably a little button or a switch, and it'll say something like up for steam or press for steam. In my case, the button has to be out, in which case the steam will happen. Otherwise, you can still use your iron on a hot setting, it's just it won't steam. So how do you get the steam to come out? Well, typically you have to turn it so that it's facing down. You might give it a shake. Hear that? That's steam. And you can probably see a little bit of it. This is how far above your blocking item you hold your iron. Hold it upwards of an inch above the item that you're blocking and just slowly wave your iron back and forth for about 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. Then put your iron back down. Wait for it to cool a little bit before you start poking at it and pulling out the corners, making sure that it's lying flat. Never, ever, ever, ever touch your iron to your blocking item. You'll melt your yarn, you'll smush it. If it's not a melting kind of yarn, like if it's a wool or really heavy acrylic, it'll just end up flattening it. It'll end up looking terrible. So never, ever, ever touch your iron to your crocheted or your knit article because you will freak out. Take it from me, I learned the hard way. So yeah, don't do that. Always hold it above about an inch. And if your iron's a really good one or it's brand new and it really belts out the steam, maybe even a little higher. That steam's going to get into that article, and you don't want it to be soaking wet. You just want it to loosen up. So once you've given it some steam, let it sit. Pull it aside and let it cool completely. Once it has, you can take out the pins and it will be in a nice flat square shape or whatever shape it is you pinned it into. That's how you properly steam block something. Now, I know I mentioned something about a quick block. I'm going to show you how to do that. Quick blocking. This is something you're allowed to do once you're very comfortable with a steam iron and you've done proper blocking. So you kind of have to put in your dues before you do quick blocking. Why is it something you have to put in your dues for? Well, it's a little more dangerous. I'm not going to pin down my block. I know exactly the shape I want it in, and I know exactly where I need to hold my iron. I know exactly how much steam and heat comes out of my iron, and I know how long I have to wait before I can let it cool before I touch it. So this is how I quick steam block. I take my iron, same process, hold it over top of whatever it is I'm blocking, but I pull. And I grab, and I pull a little bit more, keep my fingers out of the way. I sort of stretch it, I pluck it down. I'm playing with it as I steam it, but I'm keeping my hand free of the steam, and anytime I go to actually touch a particular spot of the block, I make sure the iron is out of the way. This is quick blocking. It's also pretty effective, but it's dangerous. That's why I only recommend it once you know what you're doing with a steam iron. Same thing, let it cool for a second, and then I just get my fingers right in there, pinch my corners, pull it, tack it, whatever I want to do with it. Then I let it go. I just let it cool and I let it dry. That's another thing. Regardless of how you steam block an article, it's going to get a little wet. So you don't want to steam block it, make sure it's perfect, then take your pins out and toss it. It's going to end up crumpled in a heap and you're going to have to block it all over again. So let everything you block cool and dry completely. It'll save you a lot of headaches. So that is quick blocking. Quick blocking is also really handy if you've created something, you're really happy with your stitch tension, it's laying flat enough to begin with, but maybe the edges curl up just a little bit because you made one of those pretty little star baby blankets or something, and your corners or your edges are just a little roly-poly. That's when you can sort of lightly steam block the edges, tack it down with your fingers, let it cool and dry completely, and then it's ready to go and give as a gift. But if you're new to it, I recommend using the pins because it keeps your fingers out of the way and it keeps it in the shape it's supposed to be in until it's completely dry. One last thing to do with iron safety before I finish up. Once you're finished, so you've finished steam blocking everything that you wanted to block, put your iron back down, make sure there's nothing around it, turn it off completely, and unplug it. So make sure your button is in the off position and then unplug your iron. A lot of accidents happen because people kind of get called away from the iron and they leave it plugged in, or it topples over, or God forbid, the little person yanks on the cord. So make sure you turn it off and you unplug it and it's cooled completely before you put it away. Another good thing you should do is also dump the water out. So if you're done with the iron and you're not going to be doing any more blocking for a while, dump the water out and let it cool too, because you want to keep water out of the reservoir, otherwise mildew and stuff will build up after a while. So if you're completely done with your iron, turn it off, unplug it, empty it, make sure it's cooled completely and there's no more water in it if you're going to put it away, because you don't want any accidents. And that is blocking. It's not difficult, but it is a little time intensive, but the results are excellent and you will thank yourself for blocking when you have. Especially if you're making granny squares and they don't all completely line up, or you feel like your stitches are a little tight, you can always steam block these things to get them to lay in the right position, or let the stitches sort of loosen up a little bit and things will lay and fold a little better. So you see there's no stiffness in this block, and some of the other ones I've done, let's see, there's a couple here that I haven't steam blocked. This one, for example. Not as loosey-goosey as this one, but I have pretty loose stitch tension. However, the corners are nice and neat and tidy, and they line up perfectly. So these are two well-sized granny squares, and I can go ahead and sew them together or crochet them together, and I won't have any issues with them not matching up. So that's another good reason for blocking. And that is that. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I hope you found this quick tip helpful, and I hope it put you in the know. That is what we aim to do here on the Jayda and Stitches show. We'll talk to you again really, really soon. Until then, have a great, safe, and crafty week, and keep posting pictures and stuff at me. I love it. You can post pictures to me on your Google Plus accounts. Just tag my name at Jayda and Stitches, and I will be sure to see it, and I love to see what you guys do. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you again really, really soon. Have fun!